So thank you very much for joining us for our annual Christmas review. This is what we do every Christmas, well, for the last however many, 3 years now. And we basically just spend a short time looking back over the past year and discussing the people and organisations that have really made a difference from a free speech perspective, for good or for bad. So as it's the end of the year, as I said, feel free to join us on camera. So stick your hand up. Use the raise hand function if you want to join us on camera. That does mean if you want to speak, we may come to invite you to nominate alternative people later on. That makes it easier if you're on camera, but that's not obligatory. Okay. Yes, so what I've asked my colleagues to do is to prepare their own nominations of the people they think are heroes and zeros of the year. And so we'll go through our those in a minute, and you can also add your suggestions into the Q&A. Best to put it in the Q&A box rather than the chat, otherwise it gets lost. The chat is open tonight and you can talk to as many people as you like. I think this is the way it's set up. So it was lovely to see so many of you. I think there's about 250 of us at the comedy night last night in Bethnal Green in London. Really, really good lineup, very, very good turnout, and we raised over £4,000 for our fighting fund. So that's great news. So thanks very much to everybody who came along to that and brought friends. It's a really good showcase for what Comedy Unleashed does, our partners on those comedy nights, but also for us as well. And it's really nice to meet everybody. And big thanks to Andy Shaw from Comedy Unleashed for organising that for us. It's also really nice to see so many people signing up for our regional speakeasies that we've got happening at the beginning of next year. So there's one in Belfast, which is the first time we've been to Belfast. We'll be there on Friday, the 26th of January. I'm just going to put the link in the chat for that if you want to get a ticket for that. That's an amazing lineup. We've got Andrew Doyle, Stella O'Malley, Toby, Ella Whelan, David Quinn, a Southern Irish journalist, and Geoffrey Dudgeon, who's a long-standing political campaigner over there in the north of Ireland. So that will be that should be a really excellent event. So if you're able to get to that, then do come along. Everybody's welcome. We're doing it in the Titanic Hotel in Belfast, which is a fantastic location as well. And then the weekend after that, we're coming to Manchester, and Toby will be there as well at that event. And we've got two of our most successful cases speaking at that. We've got Denise Farmy, who challenged the Arts Council, who she worked for their restriction on her gender critical views, and won. And also Sean Corby, who challenged ACAS and their restriction of his free speech rights to challenge critical race theory in the workplace, and both of those have been incredibly successful cases. So we're really looking forward to hearing from them. And Sean, who is a musician, is going to play some music for us as well, which will be great. It's the first time we've done that. So there's tickets on sale for that. I would also like to, those events are a really good opportunity for you to introduce other people to the work that we do and to kind of bring people along for a social event as well. And then I'll be releasing the full schedule of events for the next 4 or 5 months as we go into January. And finally, before we start, if you're looking for the perfect present and you've left it at the last minute, and if the perfect present for the most difficult person in your life, probably, consider the gift membership of the Free Speech Union. So for just under £30 or just under £60 a year, you can offer them all of the protections and benefits of membership. If you go to our website here and look for gift membership, you can sign them up and give them the gift of free speech, which is not a bad thing to give to anybody. Okay, so moving on to tonight's proceedings. So I've invited 8 colleagues to kick things off by proposing their zeros and then their heroes. We'll do all the zeros, and then we'll do all the heroes, and then we'll hear from you to see if you've got any alternative nominations, and then we'll take a vote and go through the results. So who's first? I'm coming to Ben Jones, who's our Director of Case Operations and Outreach. I'm just going to unmute you. I've removed that freedom from you at the moment, so I'm going to ask you to unmute. I'm also going to spotlight you for everyone, Ben, I think. Go.
Right. I hope everybody can hear me now. Right. Good evening, everyone. I'm afraid my villain for 2023 is Wakefield Police in West Yorkshire, for something that began an incident which could not have been, objectively speaking, more trivial. Four schoolboys accidentally scuffing a copy of a book. And this ended with one of the boys, a 14-year-old with autism, receiving death threats. And the book, of course, was the Quran, a copy owned by the boy in question who had been dared to bring it to school. And Wakefield Police in West Yorkshire recorded a non-crime hate incident against the boy, for lightly damaging his own personal property by accident. They were rebuked by Suella Braverman, then the Home Secretary. But the most chilling aspect of all of this, I think, was not that they took the completely wrong-headed and nonsensical decision to record a non-crime hate incident against the boy, but the fact that police officers were then present at a sort of blasphemy show trial which took place in a local mosque. And we had the awful spectacle of police officers sat dumbly and listening as the boy's mother, a non-Muslim, sat at the front wearing a headscarf, while she was being praised for not pressing charges against the boys who had made death threats against her son, lest that make the situation in the local community somehow worse. So not only did the police record the non-crime hate incident, but they also did nothing about the imam who said, and this is a direct quote, that there will be no toleration whatsoever of somebody offending our beloved prophet, and spoke of the importance of Muslims defending the Quran. Again, this is a direct quote, no matter what it takes. So I think here we have the awful degeneracy of institutions in Britain, who have no sense of the importance of defending free speech, of recording a non-crime hate incident and thinking that was a proportionate, reasonable thing to do. And then the moral cowardice of not applying the law fairly, where others had incited violence in a very real way and said things that were, in every sense, 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times worse than scuffing a copy of your own book. So Wakefield Police in West Yorkshire are my 0 for 2023. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ben. You may recognise Ben's voice, if not his face. You may have seen him on television as it happens, but also you'll know his voice from the podcast. That's debatable, which Ben and my colleague Tom produce every week. Right now, who's next? I'm going to remove your spotlight and move that on to Jill. Jill, you probably haven't met before because Jill joined us a few months ago. She's our new one of our new legal officers. And hi, Jill. Let me unmute you. God, this is so fiddly. I've forgotten what it's like. I can't. Hang on. Right. Have you received a record? Okay. Okay, try again. If you say okay to that button that should appear. Oh, there you go.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Nice to meet you all. Yes, I've recently joined the Free Speech Union and I'm in the legal team. I'm afraid I'm going along a similar theme to Ben, and I'm nominating Mark Rowley, who's the Commissioner of Metropolitan Police. My nomination is around the events that have happened over the last few months, particularly in relation to protests that we've seen on our streets and some very inconsistent policing, which we've all experienced. On the one hand, we see someone arrested for walking around their own neighbourhood and commenting on how many flags they see and how uncomfortable they find that, versus hundreds of thousands of people protesting in the streets with very objectionable placards in some cases, and also climbing on monuments, and potentially also chanting jihad in some cases. As a free speech union, obviously we promote free speech, but what we want to see from the police is a very consistent and fair approach to dealing with protests so that they strike the right balance. And it doesn't appear as if the Metropolitan Police has done so in this case. which has stifled other people's right to free speech, too fearful to say anything on certain days of the week or even appear on the street visibly. And on that basis, I think, particularly where Mark Rowley has said the reason that he cannot act is because he doesn't have sufficient legislative powers to do so, particularly given how much legislation has been used to suppress free speech, which is perfectly lawful in many cases. He's definitely my nominee for this year's Zero.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jill. I'm going to disappear you. And now, where's Esther? There's Esther. So those of you who've ever had any queries about your membership, about payments, all kinds of really important practical stuff will have probably communicated with Esther. Hang on a sec. And now I need to get her to unmute. Oh, she's much better at running these things than I am. I've clearly lost the ability to do this. Sorry, Esther. And Esther also has the unenviable task of organising Toby's diary for him, which she does with expertise and patience. Hi, Esther. Oh, you should. Oh, okay. Hang on a sec. Let's go again. Are you getting a button? That's, yeah.
That's it. Yes.
Yeah, brilliant.
I'm on.
Great.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm nominating trigger warnings on books in universities as my Zero. So while looking into the use of trigger warnings, I discovered that in the past year, UK universities have placed trigger warnings on more than 1,000 texts. The reason? To address concerns that their content might be challenging for students. The texts affected include works by authors such as Shakespeare, Dickens, Chaucer, Jane Austen, Charlotte Bronte, Agatha Christie. I find this really disheartening because these authors were a big part of my education, both as a teenager and as a young adult, and now they are labelled as unsafe. Several universities, including Essex and Sussex, have either removed certain books from their reading lists or made them optional due to their content. These books include George Orwell's 1984 and Charles Dickens' Oliver Twist. Content which includes violence, slavery, and suicide references. And then there's Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen, which received a warning from the University of Greenwich for gender stereotyping. Northanger Abbey is a Regency era novel that shows women in roles typical of that time, like deferring to men or concealing their knowledge. Apparently, the warnings are there to flag these old-fashioned views which might clash with how we see gender roles today. But isn't understanding these historical contexts crucial to fully grasping a book like Northanger Abbey and Oliver Twist? These universities say the warnings are to help students cope with potentially distressing content and to create an inclusive environment. However, I question if this approach might be underestimating students' capacity to engage with complex material. University should be a place where diverse, even uncomfortable ideas are explored, preparing students for the realities of the world. Trigger warnings, while not outright censorship, can act in a similar way. Placing a trigger warning on a book might actually lead to some people being less inclined to read it. Also, the concern is that these warnings might hinder debate and critical thinking within universities, which could be a problem for the freedom to study and the freedom to talk about different ideas. So if you believe trigger warnings contribute to culture of overprotection and censorship, please vote trigger warnings on books in universities as this year's Zero. Thank you, Jan.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Esther. Right. Esther's going, and now we're going to Tom. Tom's the other voice of our podcast. That's debatable.
Hi, Jen.
Hi, Tom.
Me okay?
He's so festive. Look at him.
I didn't know it was Christmas
It
on
could
Monday.
be January.
It could be January,
Winter is
February.
coming.
I just
Right.
realized it's on Monday. It just crept up on me. My zero this year, 2023, is the nation of Denmark. It took 334 years for Denmark to get rid of its blasphemy law in 2017. It's taken 6 years for Denmark to bring it back. Earlier this month, I think many of our members will be aware of this, Denmark passed a law that makes it a crime to, quote, inappropriately treat, publicly or with the intention of dissemination in a wider circle, a writing with significant religious significance for a religious community. So as you might expect, all the burnings of the Bhagavad Gita in Copenhagen have been brought now to a screeching halt, or not. This obviously is about the Quran, and the Quran burnings have been taking place in Denmark and they've been taking place in Sweden as well. But it's Denmark that's capitulated. As we know, freedom of speech must include the freedom to blaspheme. And as Brendan O'Neill wrote about this in Spiked, outlawing Quran burning should offend us as profoundly as outlawing the writing of poetry would. In both cases, the liberty to utter is restricted. And none of us necessarily feel comfortable with the idea of book burning. It brings back pictures from last century and the darkest days of last century. But at root, that's not a reason to ban something. And actually, many of the people burning Qurans were in themselves ex-Muslims wanting to express their rejection of a set of beliefs about God. And interestingly, the desire to make sure the law only had narrow applicability led to some absurd comments in the Danish parliament. For example, my favorite is wrapping a religious scripture in bacon will be illegal, but wrapping it in a rainbow flag will not. Utter craziness. How many angels can dance on a pin sort of conversations. Anyway, Denmark is well known for many great things. Lego, Lurpak, butter, and Hans Christian Andersen, to name just three. But free speech, sadly, not in 2023. So Denmark is my free speech zero.
Brilliant. Thanks, Tom. Personally, I think anything wrapped in bacon is improved.
Pigs in blankets.
Yeah. People, food, anything. Right. Where's Toby? Toby, you should be able to unmute now, and I will spotlight you.
Thanks, Jan. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Great. Yeah, those are all really good and may well beat my nominee. I particularly like yours, Esther. I remember reading Northanger Abbey, and as I recall, it's a pastiche of the Gothic novel. So insofar as it includes gender stereotypes, that's partly a satirical device employed by Jane Austen to send up that particular literary genre, which was very popular in the early 19th century. So absolutely absurd and incredibly tin-eared to include a trigger warning on the cover of Northanger Abbey because it contains gender stereotypes, and attaching a trigger warning to 1984. I mean, you really couldn't make it up. So my villain, my zero for this year is Leo Varadkar, the Taoiseach of Ireland, because of the way he reacted to the riots following the stabbing of several children and a care worker at a primary school in Dublin by an immigrant of North African heritage. So Varadkar's response to this social unrest and indeed to the incident that had triggered it wasn't to in any way take seriously the concerns of Irish people about the extraordinary and unprecedented levels of inward migration into Ireland, but instead to try and expedite the passage of the Irish hate crime bill through Parliament, which is I thought it was a great illustration of the way in which attempts to get these censorious bills through parliaments is a response to surges of populism. I think many of these bills, this whole effort to suppress speech, particularly on social media, on the grounds that it's potentially harmful, arose in response to the Brexit vote in 2016 and the victory of Donald Trump in the US presidential election in 2016. And the response of elites across the world to these upsurges in populist sentiment was not to reevaluate their endorsement of globalism, neoliberalism, but instead to blame these election results, which went the wrong way, on misinformation. Nothing to do with a conflict of values, nothing to do with some of the costs associated with globalization, such as a lowering of wages, higher immigration. No, nothing to do with that. It was just because these poor, simple-minded voters had been led astray by bad actors on social media. So the response was to effectively create this censorship industrial complex, of which these legislative bans on hate speech, misinformation, disinformation are just one of the facets. And this was laid bare by Leo Varadkar when his response to this outbreak of populist sentiment following the stabbing of children by a migrant was to double down on this particularly draconian example of a ban on hate crime. So Leo Varadkar is my nominee for Free Speech Villain of the Year.
Great. Thanks, Toby. And so that's the end of our zeros. Mercifully, there's a shorter list of zeros than there is of heroes this year, which is probably a good sign, I think. So what we'll do is that after we've gone through the heroes, then I'll put the polls up and you can vote on both of those lists. And you'll get a reminder of everybody of who's proposed whom when that comes up. So on to the heroes. We are now going to Tim Cruddas, who's one of our very hardworking case officers. Where is he? He's in the hat. And he's also our resident expert on policing, which is incredibly useful for us all to have. Let me just spotlight him. There you go, Tim.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, see Tom, this is how it's done.
Yeah, good effort, Tom. Good evening, everyone, and Merry Christmas. With apologies to Esther, I'm going to put a trigger warning on this now, because I had a very special beeper that beeped out any rude words. It's not working, so I'm just going to have to say those words. So I am nominating as my hero Mr. Nigel Farage, who is subject to a never-ending barrage from those of left-wing or Remainer-type hues who relentlessly harass and berate and abuse. But he always maintains an air of defiance, especially when it came to a matter of compliance. A certain bank, I shall not name its Goots, apparently gave not too little hoots about Nigel's right to confidentiality and abandoned their commitment to impartiality by eschewing his custom on a political ground. Rules against this appeared to abound, so they lied and claimed that Nigel was skint and that they actually really binned him by dint of his balance, so leaked by Dame Alison Rose, the illegality of which now everyone knows. So Nigel F. never won to be bested. To Coots, subject access requested. He got what was needed, absolute proof that Rose had actually lied on the hoof and that all Coots staff just hated his guts, but they all underestimated the size of his nuts. Now poor old Alison has had to resign, and bank regulation now has to align with freedom of thought and political belief. So thank you, Nigel. It's a real relief that you won a battle yet again against the woke establishment's increasingly tenuous reign, and reminded us all that some senior bankers are just a total and utter bunch of wankers. And again, I apologise that the buzzer didn't work.
Thank you, Tim. So Tim, I forgot to say, is also our resident poet. So whenever there's a staff birthday, Tim writes the winning poem for that person. And it's amazing how much bested comes up. It seems to solve a lot of problems when you're searching for a rhyme. And I noticed it was in that one as well. So well done, Tim. We'll try and publish that one, I think. Fantastic. All right, who's next? So then it's on to back to Ben again.
I was hoping you wouldn't say me, Jan. That's the most difficult.
Do a rap, Ben. That's
That
obviously
is the most difficult act to follow since I spoke after Nigel Farage at the Freedom Association conference a couple of months ago and just before David Starkey. But I will try my best, because it is my pleasure to nominate Colonel Kelvin Wright, who is not just a hero for free speech, but a hero full stop. He's an army doctor, a reservist who did 2 tours in Afghanistan, including serving on medical evacuation helicopter missions, the most hair-raising stuff that a civilian like myself could possibly imagine. He saved countless lives, and he is, by the way, utterly humble about all of this. He served in the reserves for 14 years, was commanding officer of the medical unit, and his ordinary day-to-day full-time work was in the NHS. Then, earlier this year, he shared a Facebook post which said, "Men cannot be women." A junior officer saw it, complained to the army, and the army hierarchy began a process of investigation under what the army calls major administrative action. And that's a process that can have penalties as serious as reduction in rank. Now, rather than shut up about it and take the post down, accept any possible censure that might have followed and stay silent, he took the decision, whatever the impact it would have on his pension, to resign in protest. He said that the mere fact of the investigation would cause women, particularly in the army and the other services, to feel unfree, to feel under attack, that they could not express their sincerely held views about this issue. And he said that the investigation was an intolerable attack on his honour after 14 years of completely unblemished and heroic service in the army. So he left. He contacted us and he asked us for our help. The post did not breach Army's social media rules, but was argued by the complainant, his subordinate officer, to be in breach of the policy for the recruitment and management of transgender personnel in the armed forces. We were able to expose this whole Surrey story in the press, and Colonel Wright was ultimately cleared after a political row. And I think for me, of the 2,250 cases or more that we've handled now, and of the 400 cases who have come to us this year asking for our assistance, Colonel Wright's story is the one that stands out above all others. And I really think his service and his principled stand for freedom of speech deserve your vote this evening. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Ben. And now we're going to go to Scotland. We're going to near Edinburgh to my colleague Fraser Hudgton, who is our Director of Case Management and also runs our Scottish office. So over to Fraser.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Good stuff. Right, so like I feel sorry for Ben there. I do feel bad for him coming after Tim, and I'm not sure if anyone's going to beat Tim tonight for the poetry aspect. Maybe we should have a special award, I think, for Poet of the Evening or something. My nominee for Free Speech Hero of 2023 is a group, and that group is the Edinburgh University's branch of Academics for Academic Freedom. My reasoning for that is due to their sheer persistence for just over a calendar year in eventually managing to proceed with a showing of the film documentary Adult Human Female on Edinburgh University's campus. The group was formed in March 2022, and the branch rather, and they've had their work cut out for them. The first attempt to get that film documentary shown for a discussion and Q&A and a screening was halted by trans ideology activists. Again, in April 2023, it was halted because the trans ideology activists blockaded the entry to the building. And finally, at the third time of asking, they managed to proceed with getting the screening taking place just a few weeks ago. I noticed that one of our those involved in AFAF in Edinburgh. Shane Benjamin is on this call tonight, and a lot of the work was due to her and her colleagues' sheer persistence on this work. In the face of what would be a ferocious hate campaign, now the trans issue remains a big issue in terms of the caseload. I see that as Director of Cases and Scottish Affairs. It continues to be at the top of the tree in terms of cancellations. That is ongoing, and universities above all other places surely are those spaces where we should be able to have reasoned thought, discussion, debate, but that appears no longer to be the case. I noticed Alma Gado is also, I think, watching this event tonight, and she has her own battle with the Open University and has a crowdfunder online, which members should take a look at if they've not already done so. But that's my nominee. Next year's big battle here in Scotland will be what we believe is the implementation, finally, of the Hate Crime and Public Order Scotland Act put into legislation. So that will be the next big fight, and I have absolutely no doubt that many of these same activists who tried to stop the showing of a documentary on a university campus for discussion will proceed to make many, many complaints to Police Scotland once that is in place, and that no doubt will generate a lot of work for us. But it's that's my nominee for Hero this year. So it's Edinburgh University's AFAF branch.
Brilliant. Thanks, Fraser. Okie dokie. And then just in case you got the impression that Tom, with nominating Denmark, is something of a xenophobe, he's going to now nominate a Finnish politician.
Yeah, I'm staying in Scandinavia.
Yeah.
So my free speech hero for 2023 is the Finnish MP. She's also a doctor, Päivi Räsänen. In June 2019, she tweeted a criticism of her church's participation in a Helsinki Pride Parade and included a picture of some Bible verses. I think it was Romans chapter 1. And some Finnish officials then reported her to the police. And this was the beginning of a process that has lasted more than 4 years. We talk about the punishment, the process being the punishment. This lasted for 4 years. The police investigation found nothing criminal in her tweet. But the prosecutor in Helsinki went ahead and reopened the matter and did more than that, combed through her history of public utterances, the offence archaeologists hard at work, and found an allegedly offensive 2004 pamphlet and a live radio interview from 2019, where she also touched on LGBT issues and the Christian view on those. She was charged with hate speech, and trial number 1 began in January 2022. She was found not guilty, unanimously not guilty in March 2022. But that wasn't enough for the prosecutor in Finland, who then went on to appeal the not guilty ruling and get a retrial, which is something you can do in Finland. And according to the prosecutor, you can cite the Bible, but it is Räsänen's interpretation and opinion about the Bible verses that are criminal. And that is a chilling sentence. Anyhow, last month on the 14th of November, Räsänen was found not guilty for a second time. But had she been found guilty, she would have gone to prison. So when I say the process is the punishment, it's a cliche, but in her case, total the truth. And so a few words to describe her: fearless, tenacious, resilient. What you need, I think, to be a free speech hero. And at one point in the process, she said, "It is my honor to defend freedom of speech and religion." She's been put through the process. She's been put through the ringer 3 times. So without a shadow of a doubt, she is my free speech hero for 2023.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Tom. Okie dokie. Who's next? Now, Caroline, down in South London. We're based all over the place, by the way. People probably think we have an office and we don't. So we're based all over the country, and some of us are sometimes abroad as well. Here you go. Here's Caroline.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
So my hero follows on very nicely from Tom's hero, but I'm cheating a bit because my hero is a group. It's basically all the people who've had the courage to bring legal action on free speech points of principle this year. So I guess that would include your hero, Tom. But I was thinking some of our members that have brought legal action. So someone like Alma Gado, who is here tonight, who's bravely taken on the Open University after they dismissed her for questioning their new Liberate the Curriculum initiative. Someone like Sean Corby, who's standing up for his right to oppose critical race theory and manifest his belief in Martin Luther King style colorblindness at work. I believe his excellent barrister is on this call as well. Or someone like Sybil Ruth, who is also here tonight, who held her ex-employer to account for effectively dismissing her after they found a gender critical tweet of hers that they disagreed with. There are lots of other examples that I could draw on and other cases that I can't mention because they're not public and they might never be, but in all circumstances, it takes real courage to bring legal action. Commencing legal action is never an easy decision. First of all, you have to deal with lawyers, which is always a challenge in and of itself. But also it's almost always going to be a long and arduous process. It's stressful and difficult. You need a lot of trust and patience and paperwork skills. People are already often in a tough space mentally when they consider commencing legal action. They're questioning their conduct after often being gaslit for weeks, going through internal processes. They're confused and often they're shocked and hurt at the people who turned their backs on them. And of course, they have a sense of personal injustice, but the majority of the time, the people that decide to take legal action do so because they're awake to the insidious nature of censorship culture and are alive to the positive implications that their case may have for a more tolerant, fair, and free future. So for this selfless and courageous act, I salute all our free speech legal action heroes.
Fantastic. Thank you, Caroline. Very, very good. Okay, and now we are going to Tracy Jane Frier, who's our Director of Development. I'm going to unmute her and yes, I am. And now I'm going to spotlight TJ. Hi, TJ.
Hi, good evening, everybody, and happy Christmas. It's great work at the FSU because I can actually say happy Christmas. I hope you're having a good evening. So I'm here to nominate my heroes, plural, of 2023. And I'm usually on this call and I'm doing it again with exactly the same bulleting. It is members and donors, FSU members and donors, without whom we could not continue to operate. After we've now been going for just over 3 years and we have over, I think it was 12,000 members, 12,179 members, I think, and counting this week. You've stuck with us through thick and thin, including the PayPal debacle. You continue to support us by attending our events, this event being one example, and our speakeasies throughout the country. You very, very generously donate to crowdfunders, which enable us to take forward some of the cases that Caroline mentioned earlier. And without you, we just couldn't continue. So, the other thing you do as well is that you very, very ably keep lobbying our MPs and politicians who sometimes just don't seem to listen. By using our online tools. So whether or not it's conversion therapy or the online safety bill, please can you continue to do that? And you take time and effort to do so. And it makes a big, big difference. So please, this year, I know it's not the done thing. Please vote for yourself and people like you. Vote for FSU members and donors as your heroes of 2023. Thank you.
Thank you, TJ. And I'd also like to, I'm just going to do a little shout out to one of the people who's on the call, Mike Farage, who is whose name is weirdly like my surname. But Mike is at every event that I ever go to. He comes to all of our events in London. And whenever I see him around and about, he's always trying to persuade other people that are at those events to join the Free Speech Union. So I just wanted to big up Mike, because I've been to so many events where Mike speaks from the audience and even if we're not there, he mentions the Free Speech Union and tries to encourage people to join, which is just very, very helpful. And I think that is probably the most effective way of growing the organisation. So thanks, Mike. Okay, right. And then now over to Toby for his hero.
So my hero is Claire Coutinho, a Conservative MP and currently the Minister for Energy Security and Net Zero. But before she took on that role in August of last year, she was the minister responsible for piloting the Higher Education Freedom of Speech Bill through Parliament. She did a fantastic job. And often the fate of bills is dependent on which MPs are tasked with getting them over the line. And she inherited that task fairly late in the day, and there was a lot of opposition to it. It's a bill which it's now an act of Parliament. It received royal assent earlier this year, but it provides slightly more robust protections for free speech and academic freedom in English universities. And it's something the Free Speech Union has been campaigning for more than 3 years. We were involved in the drafting of the bill. We have been defending it in its various iterations, fighting back against attempts to dilute it or derail it in the House of Lords and the House of Commons, and working with Claire during the final stage in getting it over the line. But she was very easy to work with. She's extremely intelligent, extremely able, in what is quite a shallow talent pool, I think, in the Parliamentary Conservative Party. She stands out as an extremely able minister, and she was just a pleasure to work with. And without her unstinting support for that bill, and without her understanding of why it was important and why various clauses in it needed to be preserved and not removed, and without her willingness to fight for it and use her influence within the cabinet to make sure its more important clauses didn't get diluted, I think for all those reasons, I'm nominating her as my Free Speech Hero of the Year.
Fab. Brilliant. That's the last one, not the last hero. So somebody has suggested that we add in Rosie Duffield, the Labour MP, who has certainly also been through the ringer like many other people over the last few years, and has really, for somebody who's not an obvious kind of fighter, she really does just has stuck to her guns throughout and stuck up for women's rights. So well deserved. That was Paul Murphy who nominated her. There's no other additional nominations, so I am going to open the poll as far as I'm aware. So very clear winners there this year of Nigel Farage as our hero, Free Speech Hero of the Year, and Wakefield Police as our losers of the year. So very good, because both of those raise really, really serious issues. So let me see if I can share those results with everybody, and we'll put those out on social media tomorrow. So all that's left then is to thank you all for coming, and wishing you a very Merry Christmas. If you have a drink, I've nearly finished my martini, which is a good job we're not carrying on any longer. So Merry Christmas to everybody. Happy New Year. I don't know whether you want to say anything, Toby.
Well, just a big thank you to all our members, as TJ said, and our donors this year. Without you, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. Thanks for turning up to our events, for renewing your membership when we ask you to, and for generally being so supportive. And next year, I think it's going to be a challenging year. So your support is more important than ever.
Fantastic. Okay, thanks very much, everybody. Have a good break. We're going to have a week off, sort of, although no doubt we'll all be communicating on our WhatsApp channels, and some free speech disasters will probably occur. So we'll see you in early 2024. Good night.
Cheers.
Cheers.